I am Farah and I will be explaining the introduction of asymmetric information. Without further ado, let's start with the overview of this topic. Firstly, the economic theory of asymmetric information was developed as a credible explanation for market failures. According to the hypothesis, an information mismatch between buyers and sellers might lead to a market failures. Economics define market failures as inefficient distributions of goods and services in a free market where prices are controlled by a law of supply and demand. So, what is asymmetric information? The definition of asymmetric information is the term indicates information that is unequal, unbalanced, or lopsided. It is generally used in the context of business transactions or financial agreements, in which one side has more or more intensive knowledge than the other. So, do these things exist in the real world nowadays? Asymmetric information exists virtually everywhere, making flawless business agreements and transactions almost impossible to come by. We can evaluate based on two cases. First, in the best cases, asymmetric information creates some obstacle but leave both parties relatively undamaged. Second, at its worst, asymmetric information can create a great financial hardship for one party and lead to broken agreements and failed negotiations. To know more about the issue with asymmetric information, you can see the diagram beside me. It starts before any transactions take place. Typically, one party possesses more information or knowledge than another before entering into the transactions in the first place, often with the intent to get better deals than its due. Consider the examples of the sales of used car. The individual or dealership selling the car typically know more about their vehicles and they pass along to the buyers. We are moving on to the next part. In this topic, there is two famous factors that may cause market failures. First is adverse selection, and second is moral hazard. So for these sections, I will pass to my friends, which is Nisa, to explain further regarding this factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Farah. Now I'm going to continue with the concept and theory of adverse selection and moral hazard. What is adverse selection? Adverse selection is the problem created by asymmetric information before the transaction occurs. Adverse selection in financial markets occur when the potential borrowers who are most likely to produce an undesirable outcome. Adverse selection makes it more likely that loans might be made to bad credit risk. Lender may decide not to make any loans even though good credit risk exists in the marketplace. It is a result of asymmetric information where a party risks selecting dishonest party to do business. For instance, with a people you will be better off avoiding. We are better off doing transactions with family members than to a stranger. Next is moral hazard. Moral hazard is the problem created by asymmetric information after the transaction occurs. The risk that a party to a transaction has not entered into the contract in a good faith, has provided misleading information about its asset, liabilities, or credit capacity, or has incentive to take unusual risks in a desperate attempt to earn a profit before the contract settles. Moreover, moral hazard in a financial market is the risk that the borrower might engage in activities that are immoral from the lender's point of view, because they make it less likely that the loan will be paid back. When the moral hazard lowers the probability that the loan will be repaid, lenders may decide that they will rather not make a loan. That's all from me. Next, Nurin will continue the presentation.
Thank you, Nisa. In financial markets, adverse selection can lead to market freeze and liquidity hoarding, reflecting biased beliefs that most securities offered for sale are of low quality. Uncertainty about asset values, a flight to liquidity, and an underestimation of systemic risk can amplify the effect of adverse selection in a particular market and propagate its impact to the entire financial system. This figure shows the adverse selection component. It shows the daily evolution of the cross-sectional average of ASCRD for 55 European equities that can be traded on both lit and dark markets, such as control stocks, and the difference between the control groups and the treatment groups. The vertical bar denotes the day on which the COVID-19 induced shock is expected to begin in global financial markets, which is the 24th of February 2020. This means that dark pools have additional adverse selection costs as a result of high volatility in late markets. Uninformed liquidity traders are forced to leave dark pools due to this new adverse selection cost. Dark pools liquidity traders have two alternatives in this scenario. They can either delay their trading, which can be costly when markets are particularly volatile, or they can trade immediately. Based on a tale of two crises, COVID-19 2020 and the mortgage meltdown 2008, are just as bad because of the extraordinary magnitude of the shock and uncertainty about its duration. Moral hazard issues are important in the economic management of the COVID-19 crisis, and the financial instruments provided for the advancement of federal funding. This leads to the potential for solvency challenges for at least some firms needing funding. Good collateral and the absence of significant credit risk during the Great Recession, much of the federal support could be provided solely by the Federal Reserve, but given the extent of uncertainty in the recent pandemic, such collateral was more limited relative to the interest in borrowing. As a result, it was critical for the Treasury to underwrite a portion of the lending in programs with a high potential of credit risk to try to limit the risk to Federal Reserve independence and limit the extent to which the Federal Reserve is engaging in fiscal policy. Indirectly, moral hazard highlights some of the difficulties involved with the Federal Reserve's financial market actions. Armed with the Federal Reserve and governmental playbook from the financial crisis and coping with liquidity disruptions in the repo market since fall 2019, it was amazing how swiftly the Federal Reserve intervened to head off fears of money market and commercial paper runs. Now, I'll pass to Hannah for the conclusions.
As mentioned earlier by my friend, asymmetric information is a term that used in transaction when one party has more information than the other party. Having more information before proceed with transaction gives the ability to the party to make an informed decision, which is unfair for the other party who is lack of information. The one party that have more knowledge or information has the opportunity to profit from the transaction at the expense of the other. Thus, asymmetric information leads to a market failure. Asymmetric information can occur before or after a certain transaction. When a party has asymmetric information, they can make an adverse selection which occurs before transaction takes place. For example, a buyer who wants to buy a used car from a seller who knows more about the car, or insurance purchases between insurance company and their client. Other than that, moral hazard is also one of the asymmetric information that occurs after transaction has been made. It is a situation where a party is more likely to take a risk because they know that they are protected due to the other party bearing their cost of risk. For example, a person with health insurance will likely to go to expensive and even riskier services since they know they does not have to pay for medical services. Asymmetric information result in disadvantage to the party who lack of information. Therefore, the solutions include the introductions of regulations offering warranties or guarantees on items sold, insurance, and bottom-up efforts to inform consumer of products and sellers' quality and reputation. Moreover, it includes market demand and supply disequilibrium and externalities. Lastly, both parties should take full responsibility of costs and benefits.